You're releasing a single, you have a song, it's good, you want to put it out there. Awesome. Proud of you already. Now, if you're anything like me, your brain is probably going, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? The answer you seek could be simple, but more often than not, it becomes a never-ending long list of things that you can do to prepare for a release. So I want to condense that down to the very bare minimum so you know what you really need to do, and then all of the extra steps on top of that and other things you can do. Here we go. Don't get overwhelmed.
The essentials.
These are all of the things that I probably don't have to tell you, but I'm gonna tell you anyway. So you have a song. We need a mastered version of that song. That means you wrote it, you recorded it, you got it mixed, and you got it mastered, and now it is ready for distribution. Make sure it's the right file size and type. Then you need your artwork. You need your picture, your doodle, whatever you want, you need artwork. You also need the correct metadata in your song. And if that word scares you, don't worry. That just means you put in your name, everyone who wrote on it, all of the details into the file. And then lastly, you need a distribution company. So whether that's CD Baby, DistroKid, whatever you use, and the funds to distribute it. It seems to be the best practice is to upload your single about 6 weeks before you plan to release it, just so you know it's gonna upload correctly. People have time to listen to it and pitch it to different playlists, etc., etc.
Basically essential, or highly suggested.
PR. If you're like me, when I hear that word,
PR,
I get real scared. There's 1,000 avenues you can go in, advertising, blah, 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 blogs, publications, magazines, radio. What do you want? I could go into a whole video about how PR works for music, but just think about how you want to promote this. What kind of media outlets are important to you? Are you going to hire someone for this, or are you going to DIY it, look up a bunch of blogs, send them submissions and ask to be featured? Is that going to be your job? Are you going to hire a PR company? Are you going to hire your friend who's a really good writer and is super passionate about your music? No, if it's really important to you to get into a lot of blogs, if it's really important to you to try to get an American Songwriter or something, strategize based off of those goals. Next is Spotify pitch to playlists. So when you upload that song weeks in advance of your release, make sure to submit it to be pitched to Spotify playlists, which you can do through the artist portal, because that makes sure it's up for consideration for all the Spotify curated playlists. Lastly, do a photo shoot, get that BTS footage when you're recording the song, post all of that to your socials, get revamped for this single. Make sure you have a lot of those assets so leading up to it, you can make a social media plan. I personally would suggest making a calendar and scheduling it so you know that you get the promo in mixed with your fun social media content. Be intentional, plan some TikToks maybe that hype up your release. That also includes making sure you update social media banners and headers and all that jazz on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, whatever you're using. Make sure the art matches the single and maybe says single out now, coming in 2 weeks. Updating your Spotify by creating a new playlist that has your new single, making your Spotify pick up to date with your new single, changing the banner and changing your about section to mention this new release. So making sure all that's up to date too means that the new people that are finding you know exactly what's going on. And make sure to also update email list website with all these new assets as well. If you do all that, gold star for you. You've already done a ton for the song, and if you just let that sit, it's gonna be fine. But these are other things that people do for their releases that I think really help with their success. Some of these you do before the release, during the release, or after the release. Some really don't have a stuck timeline. Never think you have to be done promoting this single once it comes out. The first extra would be a playlist pitching campaign. Some people think that's like extremely necessary to your release. I think that's up to you. If having that vanity metric of a lot of followers on Spotify and being on a lot of playlists to get the hype up in streaming is something that's important to you, definitely consider a playlisting campaign. You can look at something like Playlist Push or Submit Hub, where you're kind of DIYing it, pushing and pitching directly to playlists and playlist curators, or you could look into other companies that kind of base their whole strategy on this. Up to you. Just make sure you're not using anyone sketchy or that's fake playlist. Additional PR, that's just literally anything extra you want to do. Any extra sauce you got in the bucket, add to it. Touring. Maybe you want to think about playing a handful of shows around this release or leading up to it or after it so that you're engaging with a live audience and getting to tell them, hey, put out this single, go listen to it. On the lines of live music, now that we're getting out of this pandemic, hopefully, plan an album release show or a single release show or a single listening party. This is definitely not required, but I think it can be really fun and you can get really creative with different ways to launch your release, whether it's a funny Instagram live or a Zoom party with your friends or you actually book a show at a place in your town. I think it's fun to have an event to kind of launch the singles out, and it can get people really excited. A music video. If you have the funds, if you have the time, if you have the skills, make a music video. The music video adds a lot of extra hype to a release. It's another medium you can share, and there's so many snippets you can take from it. You definitely don't have to have it, and you don't even have to have it before the release. You could re-promote the single later by putting this music video out. You could also make just an acoustic video of you playing the song, like in your room, a TikTok video talking about what the song's about. That is really easy extra content that could go along with your release, where it's like, here it is again, this is how I wrote it, this is how it came about, this is it stripped down. Making a Spotify canvas.
Spotify canvas!
That's the moving, beautiful picture behind the song. Maybe animate a photo from your photo shoot or a snippet from a music video if you want. A canvas can bring the aesthetic of your Spotify up a ton. There's also the option of a Spotify pre-save campaign. Totally optional. A lot of people are doing them. I made a whole video about pre-saving, so if you want to see more about that and kind of the pros and cons, go click that video. It's another optional thing that could be really awesome to get the hype up about your song, and it's in the library of a lot of fans and listeners before the song's even out. And lastly, on the day of release, make sure the audience knows what their job is. All that to be said, the most important thing about releasing your song is determining what will make it a success to you. Is the Spotify number what's most important? Is the goal to get your music video on these certain blogs? Is it to connect with X amount of people? Determine what success looks like to you and then just focus on that. You could fill your ears with a million different things saying what you need to do for this release, but knowing kind of what will mean the most to you and what's manageable to focus on is going to help it be that much easier to not get overwhelmed and actually stick to a release plan you're proud of. So most importantly, determine what success means to you. Don't get overwhelmed. Make sure your fans know what to do and go do the thing. If you want more videos like this, let me know. If a schedule for releasing a single, including like dates you need to have certain assets by and thoughts on different processes would be helpful, I can totally make one of those. I have a spreadsheet and organizational system I use for myself, so if that's helpful to share with you, just ask. Thanks for watching and happy music making.